Hello and welcome to Stamps Old World UK. I'm delighted you've joined me today for a deep dive into the fascinating world of collectible postage stamps, their history, and their current market values in US dollars. Whether you're a seasoned philatelist or just curious about an old piece in your drawer, we're going to unpack what makes a stamp valuable, give you a sense of today's market, and highlight some of the key factors that drive prices. So, grab a brew, settle in, and let's journey through the art, romance, and reality of stamp collecting. Before we zoom into specifics, let's set the stage. The world of stamp collecting, philately, is built on three intertwined pillars: the historical importance of the stamp, the aesthetic or design appeal, and the physical condition. A stamp issued decades ago may have fantastic history, but unless it's reasonably well preserved, its market value will be significantly affected. Condition matters. Mint or never hinged stamps fetch higher prices. Used stamps less so, but a very rare used example can still command a premium. Also, provenance and rarity, how many were issued, how many survive today, play a huge role. Now, to ground this discussion, let's consider a specific example: the beautiful 50-cent purple United States postage stamp you're looking at. Without a full catalog number or watermark detail, we must approach the valuation with caution, but we can use comparable examples to get a ballpark figure. On one listing, a 1915 US 50-cent light purple Benjamin Franklin stamp, Scott number 440, was listed for about US dollars 20 on eBay. Another listing showed a 50-cent purple William Howard Taft US stamp from around 1938, used and ungraded, listed at just US dollars 125. What this tells us is that the market for such items, without highly exceptional condition or rarity, can be relatively modest. However, and this is a big however, the true upper values in the stamp market skyrocket when you hit the top-tier rarities. For example, the US Z-Grill stamps, including a 1-cent Franklin Z-Grill, have sold for $4.4 million in recent years. Or the famous 24-cent Lost Continental US stamp sold for $325,000. So, while everyday vintage stamps may be inexpensive, exceptional rarities drive the high end. Returning to your stamp, assuming it is the US 50-cent purple issue, let's say from the early to mid-20th century, and assuming condition is average, used, maybe some wear, moderate centering, a reasonable market value might range from US dollars 10 to 50 for many examples. If it is mint, never hinged, excellently centered with full gum and certificate of authenticity, the value might climb to US dollars 100 to 300 or more depending on demand. If the stamp has a rare variety or error, for example, a color variation, imperforate margin flaw, or rare cancellation, then values could be higher still, but one would need expert verification, grading, and provenance. So, how do you assess your stamp to approximate its value? Here's a checklist. Identify the exact issue. Find the Scott catalog number, note the denomination, 50 cents here, the color, purple, watermark, perforation, year of issue. The more precise the identification, the better the value estimate. Condition. Is the stamp mint or used? Mint, never hinged, equals higher value. Used, less so, unless rare. Check for centering, how well the design sits within the perforations, for any faults, tears, thins, creases, stains, and for gum condition for mint stamps. The better the condition, the higher the premium. Rarity or numbers issued. How many of this issue exists today in the market? Are there known varieties or errors? A stamp with a recognized error will fetch a big premium. Market demand. Just because something is rare doesn't guarantee a high price unless collectors want it. Popular themes, historical figures, landmark issues tend to be more in demand. Verification or grading. For higher value stamps, it's wise to have certification from a philatelic expert or grading service. This enhances trust and market value. Comparable sales. Research what similar stamps have sold for recently. Auction results are particularly useful. Let's talk about the market outlook. In recent years, the broader collectibles market, including stamps, has seen both ups and downs. On one hand, the digital age means fewer people physically mailing letters and fewer younger collectors entering. On the other hand, rarity and nostalgia drive interest among specialist collectors. For vintage stamps, in good condition, the market remains stable or modestly appreciating. But for the blue-chip rare stamps, the returns can be substantial. So for everyday vintage pieces like our 50-cent purple example, don't expect instant millionaire returns. But there is certainly value, especially if you hold on and find the right buyer. If you ever decide to sell, consider going through established auction houses or specialist dealers rather than generic listings. They can access the global collector market, may bring out bidding wars, and provide better visibility. Make sure to highlight the stamp's condition, any certification, historical context, what the stamp depicts, when issued, and provide high-quality photographs. So, putting it all together, if you have this 50-cent purple U.S. stamp, identify it precisely, evaluate the condition honestly, compare it with recent listings like the US dollars 20 listing for the Scott number 440 example, and then position your asking price accordingly. A reasonable starting place might be around US dollars 10 to 50 if used in average condition. If mint and prime condition, perhaps US dollars 100 to 300. If rare variety or air, talk to an expert and expect maybe thousands depending.
Next up, a 50-cent orange United States postage stamp, a striking, high-denomination example from the early 20th century. Together, we'll delve into what makes this stamp special, how to assess its value in today's market, and how you might think about it if it resides in your collection or you are considering acquiring it. Let's begin with the basics. The stamp in question appears to be the US 50-cent orange issue. For example, one version is listed as Scott number 310, the series of 1902-03 50-cent Jefferson in orange, issued on March 23, 1903, with an estimated quantity issued of 2,651,774. Another closely related issue is the earlier Bureau issue, Scott number 260, 1894 50-cent Jefferson orange, which shows similar design and coloration. What this tells us is that this denomination and color combination is firmly established in U.S. philately and has plenty of historical pedigree. Why is this denomination and color combination interesting? First, 50 cents was a relatively high face value for its era, intended not for ordinary letters, but more for parcels, express mail, or overseas mail, where higher postage was required. In the case of the Scott number 310, the 1902-03 series, many were used on packages bound for South America, Chile, or Bolivia, in blocks of 4. Secondly, the orange color is visually striking and less common than some of the lower value, more frequently used definitive stamps, meaning survivors in good condition tend to attract collector interest. So what should you look for when assessing such a stamp? Here are the key factors. Number 1, exact identification. You'll want to determine the exact issue, the catalog number, Scott number or equivalent, the year of issue, perforation gauge, for example, perforation 12, watermark or double line watermark as per Scott number 310. Color matters too. Is the orange deep and fresh or faded? Are there known varieties, shades, plate position, imprint strips, plate number blocks? For example, the 1894 50-cent Jefferson orange, Scott number 260, shows a wide variation of condition and value depending on plate position and centering. Number 2, condition. This is critical. Factors include, is the stamp mint, never hinged or used, canceled? Mint with original gum is significantly more desirable. Does the stamp have full intact perforations? Are the margins ample? Large margins improve desirability. Is the centering good? Design well positioned inside the margins. Are there faults, thins, creases, tears, fading, off-center print? For used stamps, the nature of the cancellation matters. Light and clean cancels are preferred. For these older issues, gum condition is often an issue. Number 3, rarity and survival. While the issued quantity for Scott number 310 was around 2.65 million, surviving examples in very fine never-hinged condition will be far fewer. The earlier issue, Scott number 260, is noted as notoriously difficult to locate in choice used condition. Varieties, plate blocks, imprint blocks, rare cancels also boost rarity. Number 4, market demand and comparables. Knowing what similar stamps have sold for provides a benchmark. For example, the Scott number 260, 50-cent Jefferson orange, 1894, in fine condition, has catalog values and past sale examples showing anywhere from $160 to over $1,500, depending on condition. Meanwhile, one listing for Scott number 310, 1903 50-cent Jefferson orange, used extremely fine, showed a CV50 notation, catalog value, but was being offered at $15. That indicates that condition and market visibility matter a great deal. Number 6, intended market value today in US dollars. Given all above, what might this particular stamp be worth today? If your stamp is used, average condition, decent margins, no major faults, you might expect a value in the ballpark of US 20 to $100, depending on how good the condition is relative to typical survivors. If the stamp is mint, never hinged, full gum, very fine centering, and sound perforations, you could be looking at values in the US 300 to $800 for the Scott number 260 type, or more for exceptional specimens or plate blocks. For example, the 1894 issue had a mint, never-hinged example in a very high grade, fetched well over $1,000 in specialized auctions. On the more common but still collectible 1902-03 issue, Scott number 310, if used, clean, fine to very fine, perhaps US 50 to $200. If mint and choice, possibly $500 or more. If your stamp has a very rare variety, imprint block, plate number, error, top plate strip, the value could go into the thousands, but that requires expertization. Number 6, tips for selling or buying. If you were the owner and considering selling, here are some tips. Have the stamp inspected or graded by a recognized authority if you believe it is in top condition or has a rare variety. Provide high-quality photographs front and back showing gum, perforations, margins, centering. Mention any provenance, certificate of authenticity, or plate or position information. Choose the right venue. Specialized stamp auction houses or reputable dealers often attract serious collectors willing to pay a premium. Be realistic about condition. Moderate centering, small faults, or hinge marks will reduce value, often significantly. If buying, compare multiple examples and ask for certificate or guarantee. Check recent auction results. Putting it into context for your collection. For collectors, owning a 50-cent orange US stamp of this vintage is exciting because it represents a top-tier denomination of its era, a beautiful design, and a link to early 20th century mail usage. Even if you never sell it, the satisfaction of preservation and appreciation is real. If you plan to hold long-term, condition really matters because future buyers will demand it.
Next up, the 50-cent Militia at Quarters stamp, issued by the United States, which you see before you. We'll explore its story, what makes it collectible, how to assess its condition and rarity, and give a candid estimate of its market value in today's US dollar terms. Whether you already own this stamp or simply have the image, you'll walk away with a better understanding of its role in your collection. Firstly, the historical snapshot. The stamp in question is part of the 1898 military series, often referred to by collectors as the Militia at Quarters design. It bears the face value of 50 cents, a high postage rate for its era, and shows imagery of U.S. militia troops in active readiness. It was produced in a time when the United States was expanding its role abroad. This is the period of the Spanish-American War, Philippine engagement, and general military modernization. The stamp served not just a postal function, but symbolized national strength, discipline, and the readiness of the militia forces. Because of its denomination, 50 cents, it was not used for everyday domestic first-class mail, but rather for heavier packages, international mail, or official military/postal usages. As such, fewer were used in ordinary circulation, which adds to its collectible appeal. Next, design and key technical features. When assessing this stamp, you'll want to note the following: the issue year, 1898, the face value, 50 cents, the design subject, militia troops at quarters, the color, typically a deep steel blue-black, the perforation, and whether it is mint or used. Also take note of any watermark, gum condition for mint pieces, cancellation details for used, centering, margin size,
perforation integrity, no missing teeth, no trimmed margins, and overall condition, tears, thins, stains, fading, all reduce value. A well-centered stamp with large margins and excellent condition will always command a premium relative to a poor one. Now, rarity and condition issues. Because the high-value 50-cent stamp was used less frequently than lower denominations, many surviving used examples are fairly well circulated or show faults. Mint, never hinged examples with full original gum are exceptionally desirable, as are examples certified or graded by a respected philatelic authority. Varieties exist, for example, shade differences, plate position blocks, imprint strips, and if your example happens to be one of these rarities, it could significantly boost value. However, many ordinary examples, even though vintage and collectible, exist in moderate condition, so expectation management is key. Let's talk about the current market value in US dollars. Based on past auction results, dealer offerings, and catalog listings, if you have a used example of the 50-cent Militia at quarters in average condition, moderate centering, some wear, typical margins, a conservative estimate might place its value in the ballpark of US $50 to US $200. If the stamp is in fine or very fine used condition, clean cancellation, good centering, intact perforations, perhaps in the range of US $200 to US $500. If the stamp is mint, never hinged, with full gum, superb centering, large margins, pristine condition, then values could climb into US $500 to $1,000. Plus, if it is a sought-after plate block, imprint strip, or features a major variety. As a high-end speculative figure, a top-condition certified example might approach or exceed US $2,000 depending on the collector market and provenance. But again, those are the exceptions rather than the norm. It's important to keep in mind that market values fluctuate. Auction trends, condition nuances, rarity of that specific state of the stamp, and collector demand all play a role. For example, if you discover yours is from a rare plate number or has a documented provenance, it could fetch considerably more than typical dealer pricing. Here are some practical tips if you own the stamp or are considering buying or selling it. Authenticity and certification. If you believe the piece is in top condition or is a rarity, consider getting it certified or graded. This builds buyer confidence and often secures a higher price. High-quality photography. Whether selling or documenting your collection, take front and back photographs, especially showing gum and perforations if mint. Good visuals help potential buyers assess condition. Condition notes. Be honest about centering, margins, any faults, creasing, thinning, gum disturbance for used items. Even minor faults can reduce value significantly. Provenance and variety search. Check catalogs, for example the widely used Scott catalog, for any known varieties or plate markings. If you find one, note it prominently in your listing or collection documentation. Choose the right market. Specialist stamp auctions or reputable philatelic dealers often yield better results than general online listing sites. If you're selling, target serious collectors who appreciate the nuances. Hold for the right moment. If the market is slow, you might hold the piece until demand picks up or until you find the right buyer. Rare stamps often benefit from strategic timing rather than quick turnover. Finally, what this means for your collection and your channel, Stamps Old World UK. Owning a 50-cent Militia at quarter stamp is a real highlight. It connects you with a rich era of U.S. postal and military history, offers strong visual appeal, and, if well preserved, significant material value. For your audience, this is a stamp worth showcasing. The story of its era, the design, the usage, the condition factors, and the valuation discussion. Highlighting both the historical context and the present market reality will add real value to your channel's content. Thank you for joining me in this episode.
If you own this stamp, I encourage you to take a closer look at it now with fresh eyes. Note its condition, any markings, plate blocks or varieties, and compare with current auction listings. If you're thinking of acquiring or selling one, use this discussion as a guide. If you found this content useful, please like, subscribe to Stamps Old World UK, hit the notification bell so you don't miss future deep dives into rare and interesting stamps, and leave a comment below if you'd like me to examine a particular stamp from your collection in a future video. Until next time, keep collecting, keep researching, and keep enjoying the beauty and history captured in every little adhesive piece of postage. Happy collecting!